friends. I'm very excited to be here today. Today we have Benson from Privy, and we're just going to be going over some of the navigations of Privy and why it's one of the best comp tools out there for people like us, people like you. And Benson is going to be sharing some of the views that he has on comping. And we're going to go through the best way to use Privy as a tool for comping today. So as most of you guys know, one of the more complicated and undervalued and underrated skill sets in our industry is comping and underwriting. And I'm sure you guys are aware, if you've been here for even a second, it's one of the things that I personally like. I just go hard on trying to instill how it is the most important skill set that you can have on acquisitions past a certain point. Of course, you've got to be able to know how to do lead generation and talk to sellers, but there's so many options out there, and not enough people, I think, hone in on this topic. And not enough people give it enough value and credit and things like that. The numbers of the deal will make or break it. No matter what, you can get a motivated seller on the phone, but if you can't do the numbers, you don't have a deal that's going to make it to the finish line, even if you get them to sign a contract. So as you guys know, we've been Privy users for a little while now. But I think this is probably the first time in our community that we're really getting to start to dive in on this. We're very excited to be bringing on people that are service providers on products that we use to showcase the best use of that product with us, so that it's not just coming from us, it's coming from the actual product creator and product providers out there. So we're super excited to have this going on today, and there's going to be more to come with Privy and with Benson. So Benson, why don't you introduce yourself to our community for the first time, really, and tell them a little bit about you and Privy and how it got started.
Awesome. Thanks, Cassie. Super stoked to be with you guys. This is a long time coming. I'm so excited to be part of Titanium U. You guys are doing some cool stuff here. Just the things that you guys have been doing together, the 50 deals in 50 states and 50 days challenge was like epic. I mean, you must be gluttons for punishment. I mean, that's one way to just complete torture yourself, but it just goes to prove that, like, the process works if you use the process, right? It's a systematic approach. And that's kind of where Privy fits in too, right? Like you were talking about the numbers, and I couldn't have said it better when it comes to numbers. I unfortunately, because of the way that a lot of people learn about wholesaling, is that they watch a YouTube video, or they, some guru is like, yeah, you come and do this. And they get so driven by leads that they forget the real estate side of the business. Yeah. And that's really where the money's made, is in the real estate side of the business. Like, what does a deal even look like? What percentage of after repair value does a property have to be out in your target market for it to be a viable deal? And then that all comes back to the comping. Like you said, the comping is the foundation of real estate. Yeah. I think it should be like the first thing you learn before you even go out and start sourcing leads, right? It really should.
I couldn't agree more with that. Anybody who's watched anything when I'm talking or attended any of our trainings, I didn't intentionally do this, but I believe in that so much, and that philosophy, and I think you and I are very aligned for our comping and underwriting philosophies. And to me, I hate even calling it a philosophy, right? Like it's a pillar of this industry. Like, yeah. I talk about it all of the time. I'm so passionate about it that people inherently feel like, like that's my somewhat specialty. Even though I would say, and interestingly enough, I am probably one of the most tenured and I am an expert in that area. It's interesting because like I'm an expert in so many things in this industry, but you know, there's such a need for this. As well as I'm so passionate about it that people ultimately dub me like the comp queen, and people ultimately like come to me for this stuff. And you know, like I've battled RJ in the past, in our careers, in our business on this particular subject, on how we train our own team on this, like way in the day. Because I'm just literally that passionate about it. Like it is if I had to pick one foundational element, it's like you said, like I would have people learn how to comp and underwrite before I would have them learn how to do lead generation or acquisitions.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and I mean, sometimes I feel like part of that is because we have done so much work to make those processes very simplified compared to others, like how we train people to do lead generation and how we train people to do acquisitions. So part of me feels like that might be part of the reason I say that, but I think also because it is one of the more complicated things to teach, especially when you are teaching it to be in any market in the country. You know, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of reps for you
Yeah.
to get to like my level on it, for example.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's like with comping, it seems like the first thing, like you can lay down a rule, if you will, and I'm changing that word in Titanium University to guardrail, guideline. You know,
Yeah.
like we're
Guideline.
using that rule with the word guideline, because realistically, the second you apply a rule, you're gonna get one that rule doesn't apply to, and you've got to shift it up. So without getting into the weeds on that,
It's
tell me.
definitely important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we have going for us is we're licensed, right? Like we're licensed. We've
Yeah.
got access to the MLS in our respective markets. And that actually is an advantage that most people who are listening today don't have.
Yeah.
But even so, I've been in the business for over 20 years. I got licensed as an agent back in 2015, I think it was. And I've done all different exit strategies when it comes to investing, from wholesale, fix and flip, buy and hold. I've even dabbled in some creative more recently with some partners. And and so regardless of your exit strategy, comping is still foundational. So this is a career skill that you're learning, whether you
Absolutely.
do any other exit strategies, right? And you should, right? Like sometimes when a wholesaler says, "Hey, I'm a wholesaler," I'm like, "No, you're an investor that
Yeah.
wholesales."
Yep.
Right? You really want to
Exactly.
take yourself out of like putting yourself in a box like that, because some of the deals that you will come across, whether it's Privy or elsewhere, may not make a great wholesale deal, but it might make a great rental, or it might make
Absolutely.
an amazing seller finance deal. Like there's all different strategies. Now, I don't want to complicate all those extra strategies now because we're focusing on wholesaling, but there's something I think helps, and this is one of the philosophies that I put together, Cassie. I call it a 4-star comp. So not all comps are created equal. And in the wholesale world, the goal is to determine after repair value, right? ARV. And this is what a house is going to be worth after it's fixed up and sold. So if you're taking notes, a 4-star comp is a house that was fix and flipped. You want fix and flipped houses as part of your comp set. It closed yesterday. It's right next door to your house, and it has the exact same property characteristics as yours: bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. It's a mirror of your house, right? Now, that never
Why are
happens,
there
right?
only 4 stars? Oh, because there's 4 items. Gotcha. I'm like, that's like a 10-star property comp. Like that's a 10-star here we go. But yeah, no, like
Right.
absolutely. And you have to learn how to deviate from that process. Absolutely. Like you're not gonna like, how often do you see that comp?
You don't, right? It's the
Yeah,
unicorn comp,
it
but that's
is.
what we should strive for,
Yeah.
right? And so there are ways to increase the chances that you get a 4-star comp by doing certain things, like targeting the correct market, right? Like avoiding rural areas, being in neighborhoods where there's a lot of homogeneous sales activity, right? You got a lot of the same kinds of houses. You don't have a bunch of homes that are different builds, different years of construction, like all that stuff messes up comping. So, especially for beginners, the easiest way to get a 4-star comp is to look in a high investor activity area where flips are happening and close to the city center where there's a lot of homes that were built in the same time area. That makes the comping more simple. And then if you can find, I make it simple. If you can find an unrenovated house that's right down the street from a house that was fixed and flipped and sold yesterday, and their comps, that's your ARV, plus or minus some small variations and adjustments, right? But it's so simple to determine the ARV of a house that you're analyzing if you use the strategy I'm going to show you guys today.
No, I think that's phenomenal. It's interesting. In my experience, we actually do some tertiary markets. Like, as a matter of fact, we become so, with the Titanium University, in other words, like I intend to have like such an extensive comps training that any property that the numbers work anywhere, they should be good when they master that skill set.
Right.
However, there's properties that don't work. They are too rural. Like, because rural is kind of subjective, right? Like, rural is subjective. To me, the way that I say it is like, if there's comps, then there's numbers, right? If there's no comps, you need an appraisal. I don't know what else to tell you. You know what I mean? Like if you're so rural, you cannot find comps. And I think this always breaks people's brains because they're like, well, they get into like somewhat rural, but that's not really rural. Like there's comps, but there's not fix and flips. Maybe there's buy and holds. Like we see so many markets like that. And then it breaks people because they haven't gone past that beginner level comp training. And for us, it becomes like this situation where it's like, well, there is a way to get a value. There's as is comps. You don't want to make the nicest, highest price sold property in the market. So you kind of need to be able to learn how to comp in that way as well, right? So like there's just so many ways that you can go to being like that expert level comp person, right? And so like my philosophies on comping go like very, 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 very deep. And as much lives as I try to put out, as much showcases and live comping and things like that, it's like I keep telling my team, like I don't think you understand. I am going to put so many hours on comping, like unlike ever before. It's not even funny because you're right. Like if you aren't comping in a more simple comp area, like you're going to have to up your skill set, right? It becomes easier when you're a simple area, but then sometimes lead generation in those areas becomes a little bit more difficult. You have a lot more competition, on the beginner side. So I just think it's really important to understand markets in and of themselves and understand the data in and of itself and really learn, I always teach it like comp like an appraiser because we are going to go into so many of those exit strategies in Titanium U. We really are going to, try to have everybody that, is in that product learn what it is to be in those shoes. Because it's like you said, you've been an agent for 20 years. You have done all of these exit strategies, or like at least a lot of them, enough to understand the other ones, even if you go through like, basic training and can read contracts. Like, you know, even if you haven't done it, like at some point it applies, right? Same thing for us. You know, that's our background, that's our history. So for me, it's like how you take that experience and you turn it into instruction, education is something RJ and I literally, like, side note nation, like when I saw our website for the university, like I cried. Like it was an emotional thing for us. RJ's not so quick to cry as I am, but it's such an emotional thing for us because this has been something that we have been working for and working towards for such a long time. And there's so many people out there, you know, like you that have these experiences. And yeah, you turned that into, you answered a need, right, with Privy. And I do want to hone in on that and talk about that part of it, because like for us with Titanium University, like we are trying to bring in people that have like those experiences, have that same knowledge, and, you know, have that product that you had a need. And so what that turned into is Privy, right? Yep. And, you know, for us, it's like our industry has a need. And we're so fortunate to have people out there like you that are creating these products so that we can go fulfill what we're doing, you know, fulfill like what we're called to do, which is, you know, the instruction, the education, the community, and things like that. Like we couldn't do that if we had to go out there and create these products. I don't even know where I would start with creating stuff. Like it's not us, but you know, thank God we have people like you out there. But so from your experience, what was the start of Privy? What brought you to saying, hey, like this product is needed and it needs to be better and different in this way than anything else I could possibly get my hands on?
So, like I said, I'm licensed, right? So I have access to MLS, and the MLS, a lot of people think it's like this holy grail of data. Like, you know, some people go get licensed just so they can have access to comps,
right,
not realizing that it comes with a whole set of baggage that you have when you're licensed, right? You got CE credits and you got continuing education you have to do, you know, every year. You got dues and fees. You have to get, you know, in Colorado, it's like 130 credits. And then it can get pretty expensive, right? So you have to figure out what that balancing point is to where it makes sense to have all those extra costs. But then you get licensed, you go in and you try to comp, and it's a 100% manual process. There's no algorithm in the MLS that does comping for you as an agent. You still have to go and do it manually. So you have to go in there and you see all the sales activity in one area, and then you have to eliminate the houses that are too big, the ones that are too small, and you have to have like variances on the number of bedrooms and bathrooms and your bill and all this stuff, and it gets complicated. So agents love Privy, and that's the reason why we built Privy in the first place, is because we were looking for ways as investors and agents ourselves to level up what we were spending our time on. We were spending way too much time running comps, doing monotonous, tedious tasks in our business, searching for deals, you know, finding buyers, all that stuff you can do with the MLS, but it's very, very time consuming. So we were looking for a way of automating that whole process. And that's how Privy was born, was being able to just type an address in and then comps would come out the other end. Being able to build a comparative market analysis, a CMA. It's just a fancy report for a property report for those for newer people. It doesn't get built by the MLS. So our system is basically, it's using real-time MLS data in over 100 markets, the same data that you and I use in our businesses, but it's the raw data. And then we curate and make that information actionable for real estate investing activities. So way different than what you're going to find on like a site like Zillow or Redfin. Like those sites are not designed for investing. They're not designed for comping. So that's what we saw, is the need to have an actual tool that uses the same data that agents and appraisers use, that has an automated comping algorithm, and it gives you the ability to adjust those comps if you need to. That way you're not spending time on that. So you can literally type in the address of any property. It'll automatically pull comps, build a comparative market analysis, show you the property history, everything in one place. Owner information, mortgage information, deed data, assessor's info, all in one location, which is basically impossible to find. And actually, I would love to show them this coverage map, Cassie, so we can see, like, one of the things that makes us different. Some people are probably thinking, well, how is it different than PropStream or Batch Leads or all these other platforms out there? And
Right.
the key thing for us is that we're the only ones that has direct to MLS data on scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I am, and that is definitely like in my show notes, like something I really want to cover is this map. So let me get this to where I can actually share this. You should be able to be good to go.
There we go. You got it.
Yeah, show them that heat map. It is totally incredible.
Yeah. So over 10 years ago, we went to RE Colorado, the MLS in Denver, and we said, listen, we want to get access to the raw data so that we can, create this comping algorithm and help us as agents basically just automate everything. And they're like, yeah, go pound sand. But since then, a lot of things have changed. MLSs are, there's like IDX for agents so they can build their own websites, and there's other things that you can leverage the data to be used. So for the last 10 years, we've been going and negotiating these contracts directly with the MLSs, and wherever you see blue on the map is where those live feeds are already out there. So again, the same data the agents and appraisers, but it's better than the MLS because it actually automates that comping process. And that's why we've chosen most of the larger markets, the ones that are more conducive to real estate investing. But you see there are some holes here, like in Nebraska, right? Like right here in Nebraska, we don't have direct to MLS data yet. We do have what's called third-party listing data, which is the same as what you would find in like a PropStream in those areas and nationwide. We just add the direct to MLS data on top of it to scale up the quality, the accuracy, and the timeliness of that data so you can get more accurate comparables and nail your ARV.
Yeah, there's definitely, so to back this up for you guys, like, it's so interesting with the way that RJ and I do things. We are truly nationwide. If we have a motivated seller, we definitely want our community to be able to assess that. We definitely want our community to be able to work a deal that's a deal, help a seller that needs help no matter where they are, right? But there are like those so many places, like you're saying, like Nebraska, like I just can't, like there's little pockets of Nebraska that we've done repeat business in, but that's it. Like there's a lot of that truly rural, like it would be interesting KPI for us to have like for all time. And I know RJ has a map of this, like our deals that he keeps updated really, really frequently.
Oh, that's cool.
Good. Yeah. So like back in the day, and anybody that attended one of the crucibles when that was our boot camp that we did for like 2.5 to 3 years or so, we used to show it to people all of the time because we wanted them to understand, like, if there was a deal to be able to help the seller and it made sense and so on and so forth. And we have buyers, like we have moved stuff in really rural towns too. But at the end of the day, like if you're targeting data, like you're working to have data, like do you think that I'm going to go into the middle of nowhere, Wyoming? No. Like, but tell me, like at some point, if you're us, especially, like you're going to get inbound leads. You're going to people that go to your website and find you out in the middle of Nowhereville. And like a lot of that is the reason, well, that and the 50-50-50s that we did because we're insane. Like a lot of that is the reasons, like it's really honed our skills in this area, but it's not going to be where I'm like, yeah, go do business here. Like you have zero competition, but it's really hard to do some of that stuff. And you have different kinds of buyers and exit strategies in there. You know, it's definitely not like our actual like main revenue source is middle of nowhere, Wyoming, you know, like, but yeah,
but you mentioned competition. I like that you mentioned that, because competition might as well just mean comps, right? Your competition is the comps that we need to use to be able to prove ARV. And with zero competition means you got 0 4-star comps.
Yeah.
Right. So that I like competition. And there's even JV opportunities there, even if you're just going to be like totally, abundance minded. Right. But that's what we use to prove ARV is those flipped properties.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just reading through the comments really fast. So in other words, like this heat map is like, do you have any markets like you're intending to add with the fervor anytime soon? Like I know that, you've got the MLS coming soon in some of those areas.
Yep. The pink ones are the ones that are in the queue. We either started the negotiation process, or we're, doing all the compliance stuff we have to do, or maybe we've even been granted a feed, but we're getting it ready to launch. That's what the pink ones are.
Yeah, I love that. So what are the markets you'll never go into? I'm just curious. That's just a random Cassie question.
It's hard to say. Like there's over 600 MLSs. Okay. So there's a massive amount, and the majority of those little ones the ones that make up the majority of the 600 are in rural America. And so it really is hard to say, but when we zoom in a little bit here, actually before is it okay if I transition into like some of the philosophy here, and I can show you some of those areas where we don't have direct to MLS and why we likely won't too. Like I want to justify why we may not get direct to MLS in Hays, Kansas, for example. So right over here on the left, we track all the investment activity nationwide. And this is one of the things that Privy is good for that isn't even on the list of features is actual education. Like you can teach yourself real estate. You can teach yourself what people are buying. You can learn local markets. What are the local market realities in St. Louis versus Kansas City? Like how are deals different? With Titanium you guys are going to learn a lot of philosophies and systems, and there's accountability with Cassie and RJ and their team. But what they probably won't be able to do, and they shouldn't spend time on this, is like, what is a deal in your target market? Because it's shifting, right? There's thousands of markets, and it's not scalable for them to do that. But the data does teach you. So when I click this button right here, what this does is it'll plot on the map where all the investor activity is nationwide. And for us as wholesalers, the most important thing is fix and flip activity. Now, I'm going to contradict myself right now, because the largest pool of buyers out there are landlords. It's more than 10 to 1. But when we measure our deals, we always use ARV, right? So fix and flip activity is crucial to us being able to understand our market and understand what flippers are doing. And so when I zoom in on, like, say, Kansas, see this hole right here, Cassie? Look what that city that I just mentioned is Hays, Kansas. There's nothing going on there. So when I'm doing market selection, I want to avoid areas that have zero or low investor activity.
Right. And I will say, like, I'm so totally going to back this up, is the first way to get me to not like do a deal in Kansas is to get me in rural Kansas. Like that immediately becomes a listing referral for me.
Right.
Because like even when the numbers work, even when like, and this is going to be something we dive into in the university, even when the numbers work, like in such a way, like it doesn't move, like even if we can find buyers in that county for fix and flip or buy and hold, it moves so slowly that like we've just not had good experiences there. You know what I mean?
And it's
I like
opportunity
if I,
cost too. Every
yeah, and
minute you're trying to do a deal in Hayes, Kansas, is a minute you're not doing a deal in Oklahoma City.
right. And most people like aren't crazy like RJ and I, where they're gonna, get deals in the middle of there. Like the most rurals that we do are in a certain proximity of one of those bubbles for you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
and this is the way I always explain it. Like I am willing to buy and hold a property like 45 minutes away if I have equity and cash flow that makes sense for me. Like, or under or closer or something like that. Like if there's a demand for it, and I always talk about the economic principles, supply and demand, right? Like if there's a demand for it and it's going to make money, then it's an investment. But you should be able to get your hands on the data, right? But rural Kansas is
Yeah,
no luck.
that's just one example, right? You can see all these holes all over the place. And so the other thing that makes it troubling and more complicated for people is when they're doing market selection, they almost always choose the market that they live in. So
Yeah,
not everybody that's in this audience right now lives in a high investor activity area.
right.
And so, and there's definitely a mixture of opinion around this, but some people are like, go learn your own market first before you start doing stuff virtually. But what happens if you live in Hayes? Like you got the world against you. It's already hard enough to learn how to wholesale and put a systematic approach in place and learn comping, and then you happen to live in a crappy town. Like, what are they to do?
Yeah,
Right,
you
right.
have to have this, and it's not. It goes beyond just like what we teach. I would say like the changes that have happened over realistically the past 3 years in real estate that people have been adjusting towards. We have more people now than ever of our peers, people we highly respect, asking us to train their teams on how we went virtual. We live in DFW, Dallas Fort Worth, Texas, to
Mhm.
be precise. And for us, I just am lucky that, my business partner is a madman, because I would be in their same shoes. I would have stayed rural or major Texas markets, which Texas is huge. So like that's saying something. They're several hours away. Or like Oklahoma, or like proximity states like Arkansas. Like I would have stayed in those major markets. If it weren't for RJ, there's no way I would never have gone nationwide. And I'm so glad that we did. Because we have so many people like that they don't live in that major market, or they're living by the philosophy of like you have to be able to do it in your backyard before you can do it virtual. And it's like, no, you have data like this that can give you the same things that you need there in your backyard,
Oh yeah. I think people overvalue the benefit of being able to look at a house with their own two eyes.
Yep.
They think that it's going to help them make a better decision when really it's the numbers that are the decision making information that's going to help you.
Oh yeah, doing this has forced us to be married to the numbers on every deal. It's forced us to like hone in our systems and processes to such a fine tune, especially when RJ had this crazy idea to do 50-50-50. Like, I mean, it was absolute chaos. So it forces you into these situations where it's like, no, we learned this through fire. Like
Yeah.
we lit the thing on fire and said go. And so that's where like our processes come from, and like we're absolutely married to the data.
I got an interesting story. We have this user, her name is Ricas, and she lives in Houston, right? And she was still kind of dabbling and trying to figure out what she wanted to do. And at the time, we did not have direct to MLS data in Houston, right? We didn't have it yet. So when she got Privy, she's like, no, I want to use Privy, but I live in Houston. And so she's like, well, maybe I'll do some stuff in Dallas, right? So Dallas has high investor activity, and we also have direct to MLS data there.
Right.
Texas is also a non-disclosure state. So comping in Texas is a BITCH.
Yeah.
If you don't have direct MLS, right? If you're using another platform out there, or you're trying to find comps on the internet, you won't find the actual sold prices of houses in a non-disclosure state, because the counties and the states have decided it's a privacy issue, so they don't show that information. So how in the heck are you supposed to do it? Well, because it's a closed system, and because of the way that we've negotiated these agreements, we can show you the actual sold prices. We also have photos and property information, and it makes it really super easy. But for Rachika, when she chose Dallas, she started doing it virtually. When she was doing stuff or trying to do stuff in Houston, she found herself in her car like all the time, just driving
Yeah.
around a properties, driving, never got a deal done. Or maybe she had like one. When she started doing stuff virtually in Dallas, she's like, oh my God, this is so liberating. Like, I don't feel like I have to go look at these houses and drive there. I can spend
Ugh,
all my time lead generation and underwriting deals, and I don't have to waste hours in the car. And this was
amen.
something that she learned just by like happenstance, right?
Yeah.
And it was weird. I was like, man, that makes so much sense. Because I had been preaching it, but I didn't preach it that way. I'm like, yeah, better comps, better data. And she's like, I got so much more time back that I can now focus on money making activities and not sitting in traffic.
Yeah. And it's not just that, it's that it is the efficiency, absolutely, right? But inevitably, it is the process. I will
Mhm.
say, like, the field work in and of itself, like, we're able to do so much more volume. Um, but I'm love that you used the Houston example, because our experience with Houston, we pulled out of Houston when Harvey hit.
Mm.
And it's not to say like we haven't done any, like most of the deals we've done in Houston have been in surrounding markets, right? That are basically Houston, but they're not Houston since then. But imagine, like I tell people this all of the time. One of the best things about us going fully virtual, we went, and people don't realize this, we went virtual um, prior to 2020. We had already done, like, that's when we did the first round of 50-50-50. We had already done deals on, I think, like 24 or 26 states. I can't remember because my brain just does that to me. But we had done deals in a lot of states, and I didn't exactly understand RJ's vision for it at the time, but he was like, why do we want to cap ourselves into our market only? Let's go here, let's go here, let's go here, let's figure it out. And it like, I kept being like, how do I put what we do now?
Right.
And how do I do that somewhere 8 hours away? How do I do that in another state? Like, there's so much to learn. Like, there's so much to change. Like, it was so overwhelming for me, when in reality, I am so grateful for it, because it made our local process, like, if you think I go look at a deal in person, if it's in DFW, you're like, I'm not doing that.
No.
Like, there's deals in Dallas where it's like, I could move that, I could list that, I could do. I do all these things with it, but I don't go look at them unless I am going to purchase it for a fix and flip myself. So why would I do that anywhere else?
It's true. Yeah, so that's one of the benefits then, you guys, is that you can do business anywhere in any market. And so if you do live in a market that has low investor activity, don't let your future success in the business be affected by you being in a crappy market. You have
Yeah.
way more control about the outcome of this business if you just choose a better market. And so DFW is one of those. This is the hottest market in all of Texas. But what we're looking at right now, you guys, is this heat map. So this is a visual representation of all the deals that are being done. And as I zoom in into the DFW area, these clusters that break up from that big cluster into smaller ones, and then we can see which neighborhoods we should target. We're not saying just go to DFW and do deals. We're going to say you want to be in a specific neighborhood, because we're thinking about, okay, if I find a motivated seller, or if I find a lead in a neighborhood, is the data going to be present for me to be able to analyze my property properly and get an accurate after repair value? So even within the DFW, there are neighborhoods we want to avoid, right? But so we're going to zoom in right here. See this 46? That's the area in DFW that has the most activity. And this is it's a rolling 12 months. So if a deal closed today, we'd know about it. So here's this map now. So now we're close enough to where those clusters break up into the individual properties. And these all right here, you guys, these are all the comps that we want to be able to tap into to help us determine the value of a house that we're evaluating. So what we do is we can shift our lead generation strategies to make sure we're targeting high investor activity areas. That way, if we find a motivated seller who's in a high investor activity area, it actually changes some things. We can give someone a higher offer, which increases the chances of us winning that bid if we're in a high investor activity area. If we're in a high investor activity area, there's more demand on the backside, on the disposition side of the deal. And when we go to prove after repair value to that person who's interested in this house, we can give them fix and flip comparables, which makes it hard for them to negotiate, where they can't try to beat you up on price or say that you should reduce your assignment fee. If you've got 3 fix and flip comps that says your ARV is right here, it's really hard to argue with. And it really just helps to connect all the dots and the stars align when we target this. So if you wanted to pull lists of deals, like you want to make sure you're pulling lists from very specific zip codes, not just, okay, just give me the zip codes where I live because that's where I live. No, you want to be laser focused. This philosophy and comping will help your lead acquisition be way better, and it'll improve your disposition too. And there'll be less points along the way that a deal will fall apart because we put a little bit of thought into where we're going to target. This house right here, Cassie, go ahead. Did you have something to add?
Oh yeah, no, you go ahead and keep going on. I was gonna ask a random side question that I'll ask when you're done showing that house.
Cool. No worries. So these are all the comps, right? So over here on the left, these are sorted by sold date. So right here, this house just closed a couple days ago. If I click that property card, it opens up what's called a comparative market analysis for this house. So we pull all the data in from all different sources into one place, and we build this nice CMA for you guys to use. And it automatically pulls comps. It shows the photos. In a non-disclosure state, you probably won't see photos. Am I right, Cassie, in Dallas? Like if you're looking on the internet or from a third party?
I don't have
hit or
as
miss.
many photos with that or as many problems with that in DFW as some other, or in Texas as some other states, like in the major markets. Like
Gotcha.
I think it's MLS dependent. Like our MLS, like I feel like it leaves photos for you, like in
Cool.
DFW.
Yeah, every market's a little bit different.
Like I can find photos on Redfin as like a consumer that doesn't have access.
Got it. Cool. And so it depends on the state, obviously, in which city. I was just curious about your market.
It depends
and right
on
here,
MLS, I think, actually. But you know more about that than I do, because I can't even imagine trying to contact as many MLSs as you have to get this data like in one click. And I think that even like if you are in a market like DFW where it is easier to find, and even though it's a non-disclosure state, like historic photos of the property, like you're not having to go out there and like try to search for them. Right? Like, I think it's so clutch to have them like right there, like where you can just click, 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 click as you're comping, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. And right here, and here's the comps, right? So our system has already pulled comps. Now this is a tutorial about comping, but it makes it really easy when the algorithm has already basically done the first pass of comping for you. We've already hidden the majority of the houses that are in the zone that aren't similar to the subject. And I'll show you that here by clicking this little settings button. And then what I can do is I can click this button that says all. That actually removes the comping algorithm. So if I click save here, this is going to go up now and it's going to show us all the houses that we hid. So there's probably double the amount of properties in this zone now than there was before.
Which I'll be honest with you, Benson. Like, there's so many things. I'm like, I want to ask this. I want to ask this. I want to ask this. Because as a user interface, hi, it's me. I'm never gonna go with the algorithm. Like, I'm never gonna go. I'm going to every single time I hit all, right? So then I'm gonna go in and tweak my things and choose my comps. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even really played too much with the algorithm, to be honest with you, because I just would never do it. Like, it's just how I use the system.
Oh yeah,
So
you don't need to, but sometimes you might need to adjust, the variances a bit. So that
yeah.
shows that we hit a bunch of properties, but on the first pass, we would very tight criteria. So we use a 15% tolerance or delta plus or minus of the square foot of the subject property. So the subject is 1,300 square feet. So we go
So
down
let
to
me ask you
1105.
a question about this really
Yeah.
fast, because this is one of my biggest things. And I might be asking you a thing, and this is for my user or for our community. What happens when there's an addition on the house? Is there a way that you can type in the square footage range, or is it always percentage?
It's always percentage.
Okay.
But you can adjust it. So like you can go 20% plus or minus.
Yeah.
Right. It's just because the standard is between 15 and 20%. That's what
So in
appraisers
other
use, right?
words, the way to navigate this, if you run into that, because this is a common question and it's a common thing for me, the way to navigate it would be to probably adjust by that percentage and then sort your data by square footage so you can select your comps that are in the square footage range. So like, for example, I had 1,500 square foot property that was really an 1,850 square property this morning in Burleson, Texas, which is in this MLS, So that's how you would navigate that. And that would be an example, you guys, of when you would definitely need to go into these criteria and make these adjustments and be able to learn this, because one of the biggest things for our users that I see where they struggle with pulling comps is they do go into that, it's pulled off of tax records, guys, right? Like, it's pulled off of the recorded information for the property. And especially when you're in a non-disclosure state, like if you're not like realizing this with the seller, like, hey, my property is actually 1,850 square feet, and you're assuming everything based on a 1,500 square foot house, well, it's going to throw everything off, right? So it starts there, and you actually need to be able to, as a beginner, understand that and be able to go into a system like Privy and not realize like your comps aren't the problem. It's that your property data is wrong, and you've got to be able to go in and adjust that information to be able to properly comp the property.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely a thing. If the house was listed, the agent puts that in there the agent info overrides the public record data. So if it, like, say this was an addition and the agent knew it was 1,300 square feet, but public record said it was 900, the agent input would override that. If it's a comparable that wasn't on the MLS and it was just like a public record, just like sale, all completely off market, then we would show the county record data there.
Yeah.
That could be challenging, but I want to show you too one thing. So this is the same house. You're right about the pictures, but look, this is the house. Actually, can you see that or no?
Yeah, I can.
No, I want to show you what this house looks like on Redfin. The same house.
Oh wait, yeah, no, I can't see Redfin.
Okay, I'm switching.
You didn't specify what I could see or not. I'm like, I see your screen.
So can you see this?
What's
no?
this?
It's the Redfin listing.
No.
Oh, I'm sharing my tab. That's why. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
Well, I'm actually looking at the same house on Redfin. There's no price. It says last sold for NA.
Yep.
So Redfin doesn't even have the price on this house, you guys. We do. That's the problem with non-disclosure. Okay.
I think in best case scenario that you see in like even major Texas markets is you'll see what it was last listed for.
Right. Which
you never know like what it actually closed for. Yeah.
that's why we don't use under contract and active comps or active properties as comps when we can avoid it, because it's not the final sold price, right? These houses are under contract and they were last listed for 305 and 295, but we don't know what they're under contract for, the final price. And then these active comps, we definitely don't know what these ones are going to go for. They're not even under contract yet. So, I mean, and then you look at the days on market and you just like, man, it could be wildly different. You know, this house is listed for 124, right? I mean, who knows what that final sold price is going to be? They're way overpriced, right? So just some tips there. Now you can adjust all of this. You can adjust the comp radius. If like sometimes people have converted houses, like maybe county record says it's a single family, but it's actually a duplex. You can add in, multifamily ticker here. So you'll see other duplexes in the area. You can, let's say it was a single family with an attic, but they finished the attic out, but it's still listed as one story. You might want to add in 2 stories. So you can make all the adjustments here to massage the data to get what you need out of it. But the data is there.
Yeah.
The other cool thing we have is rental data. So this is newer, Cassie. We've added this in within the last, 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And we partnered up with the largest provider of rental data in the nation. And it gave us over 130 million data points. Oof. And what's cool about that is all that data comes from property management companies.
Yes.
So you can see here that this house that has been renovated goes for $2,160 per month, whereas a house that maybe is just rental grade, it's got linoleum and Formica countertops, and maybe they just painted the cabinets, that might only go for $1,200 a month. So you can see the difference between a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that's renovated and a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that's unrenovated in the same neighborhood, and really help to nail your rental comps.
So does your I have a question. Do your rental comps also come from the MLS or no?
No.
Okay, that's so interesting to me, because what's so funny is, like, as a user, as an agent, as somebody that teaches this, right? I kid you not, why this is such a cool new feature that I literally, the second I saw it, I was like, ooh, like, ooh,
yeah,
like I get like all excited and nerdy, and I'm like, I want to test it, right? It's like every other tool that we have in our, tool belt, right? For comps, I am literally so excited about this, because the most accurate places, like, I can find comps, I always have to use 2 for rentals, right? And so what I've always done, even locally with MLS access, okay? And one of the reasons why, I'll get into that in a second, but as an agent, like, and as a landlord, ask me if I ever list my properties for rent on the MLS.
No.
Never.
Most markets, they don't.
I don't, but I do look at the MLS rent comps. But most of the time, like, I don't use these algorithms. Like, we are PropStream users for a multitude of reasons. We do split test because we're crazy and we're nationwide, and like we need everything everywhere, right? But I never go off of that number. I don't go off the rent estimate, but I do get on Zillow. And it's so funny because I'm so anti, like, just go to Zillow. The only thing Zillow is good for is verifying anything and what is listed for rent in that market actively, right? And those photos, right? Because I have always felt like that's like a really, like a better measuring stick, because, if you're not getting posted by property managers, like, then they're getting posted by landlords themselves. Like, that's the most up-to-date information, is like for rent in that market, and seeing what that activity is like it's the best thing about Zillow, if you ask me. But like, this feature coming from like the biggest in property management, like, this is incredible. Like, there's nothing like this or even close to this for investors out there that I have ever been aware of.
Yeah, there isn't. That's so cool. Like, we were working on that partnership for years, trying to
Oh my
find like a
gosh.
nice way of where we could have the data and it didn't interrupt with what they were working on. And so we found that sweet spot. And we got some other cool filters that runs off this rental data. I'll show you guys maybe another time because we're talking about comps today.
Yeah.
But we can bring these in for, and this is, there's different reasons to use the rental comps, guys. So obviously, number one, if you're looking for a rental property for yourself, then you need to know those rental comps. If you're doing any creative financing deals, you need to know what rents are, so you can determine what the market rents are, and then you can determine if it cash flows. And lastly, I mentioned earlier, I just touched on it, that the majority of your end buyers, and people call them cash buyers, but regardless of what kind of financing they have, are landlords. And
Yeah.
so if you're focusing exclusively on fix and flippers, you're missing out on the majority of the options that are out there, where you can find properties at a much higher percentage of ARV for a landlord. Do they want to get a discount? Sure. But a landlord who can find a property that cash flows might pay 95% of the ARV. And so it makes it so much easier for lead generation when you have way more demand for rental properties than you do fix and flips, and they're willing to pay way higher percentage of ARV wise, what makes it easier for you guys as wholesalers to find legitimate, viable deals. We'll talk about that another time, but if you're not tapping into that, you're missing out on so many opportunities.
Right.
We
The
have a
way that
filter
we
inside of
always
Privy.
tell people in our programs is like, you know, the comps for the rentals also, how do I say this? You just have to dig into what they purchased the property for and when they purchased it, and if they've put any money into it and things like that also. But realistically speaking, buy and hold buyers want a little bit of equity, but it's that cash flow, and you can't get to that number without the accurate rental comps. You just really can't. Like, that's their exit strategy, and it is a different exit strategy. And I know that, like, in a lot of markets, what's the best way for me to say this? Like, yeah, there was people that were psycho here in DFW, for example, that were buying like 95% of the ARV. And it's like, this property needs work to rent, whatever. Like, we weren't those buyers. Like, I'm just getting honest with you. I was like, no, that's going to bite us in the butt later.
There's a lot of hedge funds. A lot of hedge funds
Yeah.
were paying way too much, and we know what happened to them.
I sold. I mean, every property I listed on the MLS that was under a certain price point, hedge funds were offering on them. Every single one. Like, way more than, like, I'm like, this property will only rent for this much, right? It was madness for like several years. I've seen that like kind of back off more in recent years. But again, like, my biggest thing, and this is kind of like what I want to like drive home on this point, is that without the comps, you're not going to be able to shift with those things that are shifting, right? So, for example, like when you click on this MLS data, you can see, what the property sold for. Like, and that's another really cool thing about Privy is, like, even if it was active on the MLS right now and it sold 6 months ago, you're going to get to see both of those comps. You're going to get to see, before and after photos, right? Like, that's one of the really cool things about Privy, that, like, I think that people, like, there's so many neat little things like that I think that it just make this product like really great in the comping world, that from a user experience, like, you get to run the numbers so much more accurately when you are even looking for buyers like that. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then the comping too, again, it's more of an art than it is a science. So we definitely have that algorithm there, and then we allow you to adjust it, and we bring in the rental comps.
I'm sorry, I cannot believe that you said that, and I couldn't keep a straight face on it. So what's so funny about that is Nick, who from our team, who you know, he's like, comping is at our last boot camp. He's like, Cassie, this is why it's so hard, and this is why you're so good at it, is because comping is an art and a science. And it's so hard for people to get that it's an art and a science. And people only want to focus on the science and not the art. And he's like, I was like, yeah, like Da Vinci, like you gotta be like Da Vinci because he was an artist and a scientist. So, anyways, like my whole thing, he started calling me Cassie Da Vinci because comping is an art and a science, but like, yeah, it's like the art of it is like, oh, what's hardest to teach, right? So
It
I
is.
had
There's so
to
many
I had to
gray
throw that in
areas.
there. I'm sure Nick is probably watching this if he isn't on the call. And if not, I'm going to point him back to like, I don't know what 1 hour in, like 59 minutes in, I'm going to tell him like, go watch that. It's all for you, Nick. But you're right. It is more of an art than it is a science. But there's also like, it's that data part. It's the statistics, the economics. That's like the quote unquote math and science portion of this.
Yeah, definitely agreed. And that's where it gets a little bit tough, but that's where reps come in. Like you mentioned earlier, the more reps you do it, like if you guys are still learning, like just comp properties out with, if you're not ready to write offers, or you're still working out your scripts, or you're still, figuring, some stuff out, like comping is one of those things you just want to practice, rep it, rep it, rep it. And it'll start to kind of get embedded in your psyche. And pretty soon it becomes second nature. And sometimes you can just look at a house and be like, oh yeah, that thing's worth this. And you won't know why you know it, but it's because, and then this is where I think a lot of the education that comes from Privy is so valuable, is researching sold deals. When you research sold deals, like we're showing you guys right now, you're going to come across a property that looks just like this one, maybe next week, and you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's just like the house that we found on Harlan last week that sold. It sold for 276. Oh, this one's also a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot house. The ARV is 276. Like you won't even have to like get into the numbers. Now, you will want to go in there and verify, but it makes it so much easier when you can lean on these flipped houses to prove that. And Cassie, you mentioned the before and after, which I think is one of the coolest features that a majority of people
Because
love
you
this
get
the
as
most.
is. Yeah, you get your as is comps. Where does we teach? Where's your end buyer going to want to buy to do this flip that you're showcasing right here and right now? And like, I absolutely adore that about Privy. And like, because that's one of the things I adore about having MLS access, to your point earlier, is like, I want to know where a fix and flipper bought this, what the condition was in, and what they did with it, and what it sold for. So you have the numbers for the entire project right there.
Yeah, this is what a deal looks like
Yep.
in this zip code in
Yep.
75216. This is what a deal is. And this is also what a deal is for the flipper that did this deal.
Yep.
So we can come down to the assessor's records and we can see who flipped it. This
Call
was
that
flipped
guy.
by Oasis. Do you know Oasis?
Yeah.
You probably know them, huh?
I am terrible at remembering company names. It does not ring a bell, but if I knew, there's a lot of fix and flippers up in my neck of the woods. I mean, DFW is huge. It's why they're one of the biggest markets. It's because it's like 2 of the United States' most large cities right on top of each other.
Well, you're in the Mecca. The only other place where there's maybe more going on is like Phoenix, right? It's like craziness up there, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And there's a little bit more competition, but you guys, if you operate in a market like this, you have more of the ingredients that you need to assemble a deal are here. Yep. And more of the education that's present. You can really learn your numbers. You can see what the demand is. So for Oasis, we know that if we can find another property that's at 58% of the ARV, that's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot house, they're going to be interested in
the same flip. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they just did it. We don't even have to guess what their buy box is. We know what it is. At least we know a data point. We know this house fits in their buy box.
Well, yeah. And then it's also, with us from a beginner standpoint, like understanding how to read that data is so vital. Obviously when you're like through our program and we're teaching you to become experts in this field, also, it just goes so much more beyond that. You're able to talk numbers to them. You're able to say, well, I'm saying that you bought in those zip code. Like, how did that project go for you? What could have been better? What could have been worse? It gives you an edge up when you're talking to your buyers. And I think it's so important to look at this from the standpoint of that buyer. I mean, it is legitimately why we're so good at acquisitions. It's like where our entire acquisitions process comes from, is because we've been in those shoes. We understand what it's like. We understand how we make money. So we understand how they make money. We understand how we bring value to them in the end. And so having the data for that like buyer on an actual flip that they did do, yeah, absolutely. You could literally call them and ask them, well, how much money did you spend on that rehab? And it's like, oh, 70,000. Great. Well, like, was that your estimated budget from the get-go? How did the project go? Like, just have conversation with them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like, you're automatically going to get a like repair budget. As a noob, you don't know how to run repair budgets. I just told you how to get one. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much value in that kind of data beyond the data. And that's where the art comes in, right? So I know that we're probably running short on time, and there are a couple of other things I want to fit into this call. I don't know if there's things you want to fit into this call, like it's still remaining on comping, even if we're not getting to like showing, start to finish a 5-minute comp or anything like that. I do want you to highlight, how they select or deselect properties that aren't necessarily comps and populate their own CMA, so that it kind of shows them the rundown of those numbers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you're looking at, this map here, and let's say you're really, tight on the year built, right? And you might come over here and we don't actually eliminate year built properties, based off of tolerance. We don't eliminate those. We show you the year built. But sometimes, like, because we're trying to make everything look new, right? That's the whole point of fix and flip. So sometimes it's helpful to see some of these things. But like this house right here, I wouldn't use
don't
this as a
eliminate
comp.
them either. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to see them, and usually I get rid of them at the end of the day. But like right here, if I don't like this house, there's a little eye with a line through it, like an eyeball. You just click that, and it will remove it from the comp set. It also removes it from the map. Or maybe we're up here, and like, okay, we can't go south of Illinois, even though it's just like a regular road. That's a different neighborhood. So let's go ahead and adjust the map view. So we're going to adjust from this standard to a half a mile radius, right? So it's half a mile from the center to the edge. So I'm going to click the little pencil icon right here, and we can draw a new comp zone. So I'm going to make sure I cut it off on Illinois. And then I'm just going to go up, and I'm going to try to keep kind of like the same distance as we had before. But now all the comps are north of Illinois, and anything that was south of that is eliminated from the map, as well as the table view. So it automatically adjusts for it. And what's cool about this as well, you guys, is that these update live. So let's say you're underwriting a deal today. If you were just kind of doing it the old fashioned way, maybe you build a spreadsheet, or, you pull some stuff from Zillow or whatever you're doing. Well, if tomorrow there's a brand new fix and flip that happens, you're not going to know about it because you already did your underwriting. Usually we don't go back and re-underwrite or recomp properties because we're already thinking about the next thing we got to do. So if you don't go back and update the comps, you're going to miss out on vital information. Privy does update it live. So up here, if I were to like to save this to a list, let's say I wanted to put this in like, a DFW favorites, right? I can put it into a folder, and all I got to do is come back to that and click that link, and this will show us the comps as of this minute. So that new fix and flip that just happened, a price reduction that happened from the day ago, or maybe a house that we liked went under contract, it will all update live here so that you're not making decisions based off of old information. That's super, super helpful. And then you can share these too. So like, let's say you guys are doing one of your training calls, and somebody here in the call finds a property, they think it's a deal, they're really not sure. You can click share, and then you can send it to Cassie to look at. You just email it to her, and then she'll get it on her end, and you guys will be able to see the same data separately, and then you're speaking the same language, and in that way you are you have all the same information. And some other use cases are like, if you're an agent, you can send it to your client. If you're a wholesaler, you can send it to your JV partner. You can send it to your hard money lender to look at. Lenders love this information. It makes it way easier for them to pre-underwrite a loan if you send them one of these links.
Every time I buy anything, I literally, like, so for example, for us and our team, not that it happens every time, especially for people who are newer and may not have the habit of it. But like when you pull comps, like I'm like, you download that CMA, first and foremost, and you attach it into our CRM. You know what I'm saying? But I send my comps every time I buy a property to anybody. I'll send them to a lender. I'll send them to an appraiser. I'll send them to, somebody doing a BPO. Like I will send comps, like without a doubt. Yeah.
Oh, and sellers too.
At the house.
Sometimes you're talking to a seller and they're like, "Oh yeah, our house is worth 400 grand." And you're like, "No, your house is the same as it was built in 1962. Like, yeah, that house sold for 400 grand. That's, one street over, but it was flipped, ma'am. Let me show you why I'm offering you XYZ," right? And you can show these to your sellers too. You can take an iPad, show it to them, or you can email it to them so they can see like what reality is.
Put out like an actual CMA, or like when you email it right there?
Yeah, well, this is the CMA itself. So when they open it up on their computer, they click the link, they're going to see this report, this CMA on their computer.
Okay, so it doesn't show it with like the averages. So like if you wanted to like be somebody who you would just print to PDF this screen.
No, this is not a printable CMA. It's all digital.
Oh, I mean, if like I wanted a PDF of it, I would just print a PDF on this screen. Or like, what does it show you the average numbers like a quick CMA, for example?
No, we don't do averages. That's one of the things that we've discussed, but at the end of the day, like if you average in a house that was unrenovated with a house that was renovated, it pulls your potential ARV down because you're using unrenovated homes. So I like to see these, but I'm going to lean on the fix and flipped houses as what drives value rather than a house that was just a regular sale. Right. That's preference, but these are all 100% shareable, but we're not calculating averages now.
So when you send that shareable email, it shows you this screen, right?
It'll show it the same way. Yeah. And it's all interactive. They can zoom in, they can look at the comps. Like if I'm like, well, look at this comp. This one was flipped too. I can pop it up right here and see the fix and flip comparable as well. And then you can toggle back to the subject property. So, and again, that's all live.
So for example, if I hit share and I put in my mom's email address.
She's a buyer.
What shows up for her is like this clickable format.
Yep. And she doesn't have to be a Privy user.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah. That was another thing we debated, but we realized that this is a collaborative tool, right? So we've got our paying users, the people who have subscriptions, and the people that they're working with may not have Privy. So you can send it to your lender, you can send it to your agent, you can send it to a buyer or your mom, and they can click the link and still see all the information right there on their computer or laptop or tablet or phone, for that matter.
Yeah, no, that is insane. Like, and very cool. Like that they have like the digital version of this. Like they can click on it, they can see the photos, they can see, you know what I mean? Like they can see the before and after on this, and you can say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I have to take your house that looks like this and turn it into a house that looks like that. And like, here's the data. Like,
right.
Period.
Yeah. And then you can show what other people bought them for. That's is why I'm offering you 160 and not 250. Right. It's because your house still looks like this, and I need to make it look like this.
That's
See my dilemma? I have to work with numbers here.
I will be honest with you. I think we've been with Privy, goodness, since April, right, of 2023, maybe March of 2023. And we've been using this tool since then. So we're going on almost a year. And I honestly have never had my team actually hit that share button. I've shared it to my own email. This is my truth. I shared it to my own email, and I fully believed that the reason that I had the clickable access like that was because I am a user. Like, I didn't realize that I could send it to my mom and them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so
It's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like, it's very much, and I think that that's one of like the crazy amazing things about this being created by realtors, because it is more than just you, right? Like, realtor wise in Privy, that is so incredible. It's like a lot of the other products that are created for our industry, like the realtors get left out of those, those products. And like, I think that was one of the first things that like made me fall in love with Privy. I was like, oh my gosh, like a realtor's perspective, this is going to have features that I wish other things like didn't, like they had so much that I do have access to on the MLS, right?
Right.
Like, and that being one of them, it's like when you send, like you share property from the MLS to a client, like you have the clickable thing, and like they go into one home and like they can click on all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Now they might not see all of the information ever on the property like we can see in the MLS, but like that is one of the features that I love about the MLS, is I can share my comps like that. I can print a quick CMA so it shows them like in data fields.
Yeah, this
But
is pretty cool too, Cassie. When you're comping, you want to see like, what was it listed for originally, right? So you can see this house was originally listed for 329, and then they did price reductions, right? They went to 325, they went to 320, and then they eventually sold for 305. Then at the 305, went under contract, and then it closed a couple days ago. So that
which in a
information,
non-disclosure state, like we discussed earlier. Imagine if you're trying to go off of Zillow or something like that that doesn't have that MLS data pulled in a non-disclosure, like literally Texas. You're gonna be like, well, I guess I'll use 325. Well, my friend, you're going to be 20 grand off.
yeah,
You know?
that's the decision, or that's the difference between like getting into a bad deal you shouldn't be on at all,
Oh yeah.
or
That doesn't make it to the
submitting a
closing.
lowball offer, and like you submit an offer because you think, oh man, I don't really understand the numbers, so I'm gonna write an offer. I'm gonna lowball it. If I get it, it'll be a deal. And then then you're just like, you're writing the offers just for the sake of writing offers, because there's no chance of winning it because you're not working with real numbers.
Yeah.
So the acquisition gets way easier when you comp properly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is going back to the beginning of our live here today. I mean, it's the end all be all. As if like you don't do that right, you go through a bunch of work and that thing ain't making it to the finish line no matter what,
Yeah.
So okay, so like we've gone through why it's so important. Like we've gone through the heat map, we've gone through showing the navigation of the system and some of the key features, like that heat map, the before and afters, the fact that you can share this to anybody in your mom and them. And I know like there's so many more incredible features that Privy has, and I know we're going to keep getting into them. But as far as like, I think one of the things that we are missing out, like that our audience needs to know, as far as like, look, comping, teaching them how to comp, yeah, that's my job. I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to get them there. Come hell or high water, they're gonna meet me where I am on that field, right? I'm putting it out there. Titanium University is gonna be insane. right? As far as Privy in and of itself goes, like with, I think one of the things, like maybe when you say the words MLS to scale, like what does that mean to you? What is it about Privy that makes this so much better than anything they can get their hands on, including the MLS?
Well, yeah, I don't know how much time we have because there's lots of other features that we didn't really dig into.
In 2 sentences, Benson, in 2 sentences.
But on scale means that, we've got over 100 direct to MLS markets. So maybe you work in, like, I don't know, another state, maybe like Boise. Maybe there's a little company in Boise that has the Boise MLS, but they only do Boise. So someone in Boise might be like, oh yeah, well, we've got this tool. Well, yeah, it only works in Boise. So direct to MLS data on scale means we've got it nationwide in any market that you probably want to do business in, plus or minus maybe a couple markets that we're still working on. That's what I mean by on scale. Like we've put the time in, we've built the moat around this platform based off of doing the hard work of negotiating those contracts and making sure
Yes.
100% compliant, and also built a platform that's 100% collaborative with real estate agents, with clients. And so they can talk the same language and actually get deals done. In the past, real estate agents basically had the onus, all of the weight on their shoulders of having to comp every property out for their investor clients, find the deals, convince them that it's a deal and push them over the finish line. When now we got a platform where an entrepreneurial investor can get involved in the process and they can search for deals on a Sunday night while they're watching football.
Yes.
They don't have to wait on their agent to do all the work. And it's creating a balance, which is probably one of the coolest things where, Cassie, for years, I heard investors say, I hate working with real estate agents, right?
Oh,
like
God.
for years, right?
Yeah, I know.
And then we got
forever.
the agents who are like, oh my gosh, I hate working with investors, like especially newbies, right? Because they suck all my time, all the comping. It's just like, I'm just like, running my head through a ringer. This levels the playing field where now both those parties can work together and it can be equal. And the expectations are set. The agent can work on what they're good at, like negotiating deals, writing offers, again, for on-market stuff. And the investor can get more involved, the ones that want to. But there are some investors out there who just want the agent to do everything, and that's fine too. But everybody that's on this call are entrepreneurial investors and wholesalers. Like, you guys want to get your hands dirty. You want to comp properties out. You only can work at night because you were working the rest of the day. And you had dinner with the family and you put the kids down and now it's midnight and you finally have an hour to spend on your business. You shouldn't have to rely on somebody else to do that. And that's what Privy has been good for years.
No, I absolutely love it. So guys, well, first and foremost, before I go into final thoughts, what is there anything else like that you would say, you have to see this, I want to showcase? I don't want to cut you off because I know you and I both could talk about this for 9 years straight and probably never take a break except for sleeping and potty. But like, as far as the comping goes, I know this isn't going to be the last time we ever talk about it. But right now, as we are finishing up Titanium U, we're going to be showing people how to use this product in more depth, certainly. But for you, is there anything else you want to showcase on this call? Because I got time. I don't got to cut you off. But
yeah, well, I think we can get into a bunch of other things another day. But there's one thing that comping leads directly into is finding deals quickly, right? As we told you how easy acquisition is. So there's off-market leads, which we can help you find in Privy as well. But there's also on-market leads. On-market are the lowest hanging fruit. And guess what, Cassie? When we were looking at those 2 deals that we looked at that had those great margins, both of those deals came from the MLS.
Yeah.
So there's a huge misconception out there amongst the wholesaling community that thinks that the best deals or all deals must come direct from seller, off market.
Yeah.
We have this button right here. It says find similar active deals. This is actually patent pending. What we did
Woo.
is we created a button that finds deals for you, but not just based off of some like universal formula. It uses these closed deals as a model for what a successful deal looks like. And then it reverse
Exactly.
engineers it and shows you the stuff that you can buy today that match your specific deal criteria for your market, for your buy box, or for your buyer's buy box. So if I click find active deals, it's running comps on all the properties in this area. And it's going to show us houses that we can buy today. Now, I will make one adjustment here because the default percentage of ARV that we look at is 75% or lower. So if there's something at 76%, we won't see it. If there's something at 40%, we will see it. But the last two deals we looked at were both less than 60%.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and lower this to 60. And then let's say we talked to Oasis Construction and they said, you know what? We want to stay under 300 grand. Well, we can build their buy box right in here and I'll lower the purchase price to 300,000 and we'll put the percentage of ARV at 60%. And then we can rerun this search. And now this is going to go and extract out properties that make sense today. So here's
Benson,
a handful of
don't
properties.
go too far because I was planning on having a whole call with you on finding property.
Well,
No,
you told me
it's
the one feature.
incredible. It is incredible.
Yes. Yes. So I
And
won't
then
go too far in this.
It updates you every time a new one comes on the MLS. In that buy box, you can set up multiple buy boxes in a market. Like it's incredible. And so then
you just
it's
have
like
to save it. You just click
for
save
me,
search,
I was
and
totally
it'll
like
alert you.
trying so hard not to go into those features, like for the agent outreach and like finding other like on market properties. If I don't know if you remember this, but we started on market. Like that's how we were taught to wholesale. Like we took an education program and now it's been, I don't know, 9-10 years ago. I actually think we just had our full-time anniversary. It was 9 years. But I always I remember that stuff wrong all the time. But but yeah, like when we were taking that education course, it was like 10 years ago. When they taught us how to do that, I can't even fathom having a tool like this. Now, I always say, Dan, I am so sorry if this philosophy is anti-Benson, because I am really big on this. I always say, because of my experience, MLS, direct to MLS, and I do want to get into this so much on that call because like I would like you to break barriers down for me even. It's not for like the beginner. Like you have to educate yourself on how to navigate that call with that agent. But it can be so vital. And like, as this shows, like this is insane to me because if you had asked me prior to this call, I would never in a million years have thought there was that many properties on the MLS right now that were potential investment properties in that area. I would have never guessed it. And that's my hand to God truth. For me, I would have figured it was way more like going through a needle in a haystack. We used to, when we first started, have a role in our company. The first role we created, the first hire we ever made was called a property analyst, and they would scour the MLS. They would scour the MLS and all of DFW by zip code. And like we would have them go through like, here's your list of zip codes for this week. And then they would submit like what your company, like your patent pending, God willing, button does. We had a whole role and multiple people that we had doing that for us in our business. That's insane.
It is. It's such a huge time saver. And like you said, it alerts you, right? So once that search is saved, it will email you every time a property's found that matches that deal criteria. And then you can just write the offers. And you want to go in and verify the comps, make sure that, the comp isn't on the other side of a highway or, maybe the comp is, it crosses one of those little barriers where like you can't go south of Lincoln, like we used in that example earlier. You just got to verify that stuff. But I will say, and we can cover this more on another call. When I first started looking for a market outside of Colorado to go do wholesaling, and it was St. Louis. All I did was find an agent out there that was that wrote all the offers for me. So I didn't have to talk to the listing agent. So I didn't know that market. Nika did. So I'm like, hey, Nika, I'm going to just find deals with my software. I'm going to send them to you. Just let me know if I'm crazy on the ARVs. And I just want to submit offers. And she's like, sure, let's do it. So I never talked to listing agents. And she did it all for me. So I think that if
We
you're a
did that
beginner,
too when we first started going virtual. I'll be honest with you.
yeah,
Like we connected with agents in like all of those initial markets. Like we didn't know any better. We didn't know there was a better way. And probably absolutely everything about the way we would do it now, especially with a tool like this, would be different than we did it then anyways, but we're talking like 7-8 years ago,
yeah,
we don't even operate even close to what we did. We've learned so much along the way. But to that point, I think that that's what's so insane about like, and one of the things that's so important to us is to stay updated on what's available, to continue to showcase things like this, like where people may not realize like Privy is so much more than a comp tool. That's why, we're going to continue to have you coming in to the community and pouring into that and like the different ways you can utilize it. Because a feature like this would have changed. We did really well the first 2 years. But it was completely unsustainable.
right.
Completely unsustainable. That we had to have like whole roles in our company to do some of the things that this does. And it's like you said, like at one point in time, I literally thought I was going to end up having to go get licensed in all these other states that we were going to choose to go into. Like it was so crazy back then for me. And it's hard to say because I don't want to sound like that like old crony who's like like if you knew what it was like back in my day, or anything like that. Like but that is what I'm saying. These kinds of things excite me so much because they allow people in this business now to focus on the art form and the data and the numbers, and educating themselves and getting so much better instead of having to walk uphill, to get through all that stuff that we got through back when we started. I wouldn't change it for the world. However, I'm so appreciative of this product, of these tools, because man, I do know what it was like to not have that button to push. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Like Jacob just posted in there, failing at wholesaling is absolutely killing me. And I can empathize with that, Jacob. Like it is hard, right? There's so many moving parts. And so using a tool like Privy will really simplify a lot of the stuff that's bogging you down, the stuff that's really like clouding your mind and distracting you from like the actual minutia of getting a deal closed. Like we're distracted with the stuff that's just weighing us down, right? So
Yeah.
that we can get rid of a bunch of that stuff by leveraging algorithms and automation, and then we can focus on the stuff that is difficult for us. And everybody has different challenges, right? Maybe Jacob's, challenge with lead generation, but somebody else like Jeffrey is like, man, I'm just not able to find viable buyers, or maybe somebody else is like, man, it's the comping. Like it's all
I'll be
valid.
honest with you, Benson, 95% of the time. This is not an actual statistic. This is just based completely on my emotions and experience. But no, literally, like we have so many people that educate themselves. We have so many people that lock up deals and ask us to JV with them, and their numbers are just off.
Yeah.
I call comping and underwriting. I do tend to put them together because they're equally as important to me. And frankly, like I have created a tool to make the underwriting that much easier. You know, which I educate people on. It's how we train our team. It's how we do every deal in the friggin' country, you know? And for me, they're equally as important. And one of two things is always wrong in those scenarios, right? It's like we can teach people to do the acquisitions. We can teach them to get over our fears. We can teach them so many things, but it's because they do not want to put the work in. They don't want to pay for the tool. They don't want to learn how to comp and underwrite, or they don't think they just don't understand why they're wrong when they have a $250,000 ARV property and they sent in under contract for $140,000, why it isn't selling for them and will be JV with them when the property needs $85,000 worth of work. There's not room for profit, right?
Right.
And most of the time, people in Jacob's situation either haven't been through an A to Z program like Titanium University, they haven't figured out that lead generation point and the acquisition point or the contracts or all the stuff that we're putting in there. But even when they do, they get so disheartened because they can't get the comps and underwriting down. And when you said it earlier in this call, it's like I would have people learn it before I would even teach them lead gen. It's like, yeah, I'm almost like certain, because the way the university is going to be designed is in modules. We're going to encourage people to go through them start to finish to learn it completely the titanium way, right? There's going to be a few people that probably can skip over some of the contracts modules, you know, and like maybe they'll go back to that, you know, when they need to learn about like a specific kind of contract. But at the end of the day, I can almost guarantee you that the comps and underwriting portion of that is going to probably outperform as the first thing people watch. Because it is the biggest need, and it's the biggest reason why people who are in that position are in that position where they're trying, but they're failing. They're not getting their deals to the finish line, you know, and so they're like, it's fine, I'll go ahead and JV. But, you know, it's why we're so passionate at it. We see so many people who figure so much of this out. And I'll just be honest with you. I hate to say it. You probably hate me saying it. This is not the fun, sexy stuff to a lot of people. This isn't what it like. I mean, come on here and nobody's ever seen us before and they want to get into wholesaling. You know, the first thing they're attracted to is king closer. Okay.
Right.
So they love them belts. You know what I'm saying? Like they love the acquisitions. They love that. They love learning that stuff because it's more fun, to be honest, you know, and to most people, it's like they think comping is easier, or like they think they have it right. They think that they can apply some rules, and like, you know, I see people get it wrong more often than anything else. Comping and underwriting, 1,000% is where people go wrong more than anything. You have less, if I was to put it in one reason and one reason alone, one sentence alone, you have way less room for grace or mistake or to be off in comping and underwriting than you do on a seller call. You can say the, you know, maybe the not 100% right thing on a seller call and recover. You know what I mean? Unless you're just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like you can accidentally pull some data in the not best market and still profit off of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if you get the numbers wrong on every one of your deals are never going to make it to the finish line. You're never going to make money. And I will say this, like, it's the other thing about it is like when you don't have, like, when you're struggling, like so many of the people that send in those deals, they're literally trying to go nationwide and like they are not in their market They don't have MLS access, and literally they're like, help me with my numbers. Like, I have this great lead. Well, first of all, if you can't run your numbers, how do you know it's a great lead? But I digress. I have a motivated seller, and all I have access to is Zillow. So I want you as a company to run my numbers for me and tell me if I should lock this up. And I'm like, did I just get hired for a job for
Right.
you? No, like, bro, you got to learn how comp and underwrite. You got to get you some tools if you're going to go out and be a carpenter. You know what I mean? Like, you can't.
100%.
Yeah, you can't
But it
build
stops
this.
people too from taking action, and you can't close a deal if you don't know what the house is worth.
Yeah.
You can't close. You can't close a deal if you don't know what the ARV is. So you don't know what the ARV is. You certainly can't determine a proper asking price and try to close that. So it's all
Try talking to a
connected,
buyer
you guys.
without understanding how to talk about that or having the data.
Yeah.
You can't. You're going to get shut down.
And you might get a house
buyers.
under contract, and guess what's worse than not knowing your numbers? Canceling a deal.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing. You don't ever want to cancel a deal. Yeah, there's circumstances that pops up, but the majority, and this is the same like your, make-believe data too. The majority of deals that are canceled not because of some other scenario like with the seller or with the buyers. It's usually because they don't lock it up at the right price. They
and that's
overpaid
crazy to me
and
because
had to cancel.
Yeah, most of our deals that get canceled are actually because of title issues, realistically. So not because they aren't able to be moved. But the second most in our company in the country, you're 1,000% right. And then Titanium's going to go tell them the real price, and we're going to lock it up and get it moved for them. But the second reason is just because, the property's value was just very far off in the seller's subjective terms. Because we are virtual and because we are nationwide, there's subjective terms, and we leave them subjective because we don't really want to talk to them. They're not contractors. They're not fix and flippers. They'll think the house just, needs two things and it's in great livable condition. And it's like, yo, your house needs $40,000 more than I thought it was going to need. But we figure that out very quickly. And we tend to just go right in before we would even go into like the dispositions process. Those are 1 and 2 on why our contracts get canceled. But I will say this, when it comes to JV deals and when it comes to like our students deals, it's always because of the numbers.
Yeah.
It's always because of the numbers. Now, part of that might be just because we tell them right out of the gates, the numbers are off. Like, I'm not even going to, you can't move forward on this because it's not going to move,
Right.
And for the most part, that isn't even always like the underwriting. It is the comping. But what's interesting about that is that sometimes it's like I see people and they actually figured out good comps. But like a deal I told you about earlier, there's no room for profit for a buyer because they're not considering, closing and holding costs in the process for the buyer. It's like there was negative $27,000 profit potential in the deal that was sent over to us. And like I look at hundreds of those a week, if not more. And it's always the numbers. They lock up the contract. And so, yeah, I will say this. If you don't have the tools to get the numbers right, you can guarantee you're going to live in the land of frustration for a while. And you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to be mentally strong. And you're going to have to get you the skill set and the tools. You're going to have to work those things up in order to be able to be successful in this business. I will give you a bit of encouragement. Like, there's so many ways to speed this up and do this well with great tools and great education, like was not available. Like, we paid so much for our education when we got started, and we didn't know jack diddly when we got into it. And so I will give you that bit of encouragement. And I will tell you too, if you aren't, like, plan that in your budget because it's going to skyrocket you. And once you get over that initial hump, and you kill that frustration, it's going to, like, wholesaling changed our lives, you know, like real estate investing changed our lives. And I wouldn't have it any other way, even though I talk about all those crazy things. Like, we didn't have access to anything like Privy. I cannot imagine how much money we would have made the first couple of years if we did. Like, absolutely insane amounts. Like, I know for a fact the first 2 years we would have made $750,000 more money if we had a tool like Privy. Like, I actually know that number. And it would have been larger than that.
Wow. That's crazy.
So when I
That's
say these
like,
things, it's not because it's not based on real experience or like not data. Like, I know for a fact that in the first 2 years we did this, we would have made $1.5 million more if we had had Privy.
that's
Isn't that
crazy.
crazy? At least. And I'm saying that's at least. Like, we
And
would
for
have done
the
more
new
volume.
people here, that sounds like, oh my God, like out of control. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people that are really doing that kind of volume.
Yeah.
And so for some of us, it's just getting that first deal closed. But you guys, you stick to it. If you can use a tool like Privy to comp, lead gen, um, build your buyers list, like we'll get into it another time. There's a lot more that the tool will help you do. And if you decide you want to get it, there's probably some links and stuff in the show notes for you guys. And there's
Oh
some
my goodness.
discounts for you too.
Yeah, it's definitely in the show notes. RJ put them in there. I'm like, oh, I didn't even check to see where they are. But yeah, in the show notes.
So I think we're streaming this to YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And in those notes will be a link that you guys can get. And we're giving the Titanium family some special offers there. So just make sure you use that promo code Titanium so you can get the access to the discounts. And then you guys, you won't be left hanging either. Like they're training on Titanium University. They're going to be training on a ton of stuff that's going to help you be successful. But we do Privy training twice a week. Tuesdays and Thursdays live. So if you decide to jump on, you're not going to be left hanging. We're constantly doing training. There's on-demand tutorials and videos as well, but you can actually talk with a real person and get your questions answered.
I think that that's just so incredible, and it's such an incredible opportunity for people, you know, to figure out how to use the product. Because one of the other things that we get from a lot of our people is like, it's so important to them to have product support when they're new to a product.
Yeah.
Or new to this. And like, that's pretty, you know, high level to be able to have that opportunity and that security going into a new product. Like, that's crazy amazing, you know?
Oh yeah.
James says, what times are the
Let me check for you, James. I know they've changed them a bit. But let me check for you.
isn't there a schedule on the website? I don't know if it goes through our link.
Let's see. There is a schedule. So live training is Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern and Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Sweet. Yep, okay, well, I love it so much. I really appreciate you, Benson, for coming in and pouring into our community. We love Privy. We're so grateful for a tool like this. Obviously, when I just told you one number, we're super grateful to be able to have this, you know, all across the country. It's such an incredible product, and I cannot wait to bring you on in the future to show everybody all the other options that you have with Privy, and continue to just deep dive into how this can add to our community, because it is such an incredible product.
Well, I am very thankful for you, Cassie, and RJ, and the Titanium University group, the family. Thanks for being here, and let us know if we can help. If you do have questions, you can reach out to our support team. It's support@privy.pro. And you can get your questions answered there about, the software itself. So I put that email there for you in case anybody wants to reach out to the team. But thanks again,
Love
Cassie.
it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful evening, and we will see you guys live tomorrow with RJ.
Bye, guys.